They laughed before they knew her name. The music flowing beneath the crystal chandeliers never stopped. Yet conversations across the grand ballroom slowed. I drifted toward the young Nigerian woman, standing alone near the entrance. Her invitation had been checked 3 times already. Even then, whispers followed her through the room as though she had wandered into a place she could never belong. Amara stood perfectly still. She had learned long ago that dignity often spoke louder than arguments. The charity gala inside Han Estate gathered some of the most influential people in South Korea. Business leaders, diplomats, celebrities, and philanthropists had all arrived hoping to win the approval of Han Group's mysterious chairman. Publicly, he was known as Chairman Seo Joon-ki. Privately, powerful people whispered another title, the Korean Mafia Boss. But Chairman Seo had not yet entered the ballroom. That absence allowed smaller egos to become much louder. A wealthy executive glanced toward Amara before smirking. I think someone made a mistake with the guest list. Several people chuckled. Another woman folded her arms. Perhaps she's with a catering company. The word spread faster than the music. No one noticed that Amara never defended herself. Instead, she looked toward an old portrait hanging above the marble staircase. Her expression softened, as though she remembered a promise made many years before. That quiet smile puzzled one elderly estate employee. He recognized it immediately, but before he could speak, the massive ballroom doors slowly opened. Every conversation stopped. Chairman Seo Joon-ki entered without haste. His black suit was immaculate. His posture never changed. Security remained several steps behind him, allowing silence to announce his arrival more effectively than any introduction could. He greeted distinguished guests with polite nods before his eyes settled on the woman standing alone. For the briefest moment, his calm expression changed. Not with anger, not with confusion. Recognition. No one else noticed. But everything was about to change. Chairman Seo continued greeting ambassadors and executives as though nothing unusual had happened. The room relaxed again, assuming his brief glance toward the young woman had meant nothing at all. But his personal secretary noticed something everyone else missed. Chairman Seo had abandoned the carefully planned route through the ballroom. Instead of walking toward the stage, he quietly changed direction, straight toward Amara. The crowd parted instinctively. The same guests who had mocked her moments earlier now watched with growing confusion. One executive whispered, "Why is the chairman walking over there?" His wife frowned. Perhaps security discovered she's here by mistake. The whispers grew louder with every measured step. Amara lowered her eyes respectfully as Chairman Seo stopped a few feet away. Neither of them spoke immediately. The silence itself became unsettling. Then Chairman Seo asked a question that seemed strangely personal. "Did you keep it?" Amara blinked in surprise. For a second, emotion crossed her face before she reached into the small handbag she carried. Carefully, she removed a faded red ribbon wrapped around a tiny wooden charm worn smooth by time. "I never lost it," she answered softly. Several guests exchanged puzzled looks. Chairman Seo looked at the little charm, as though it carried decades of memories. "It survived," he murmured. "So did we?" No one in the ballroom understood what they were witnessing. Years earlier, before Han Group became one of the country's most influential corporations, a teenage Seo Joon-ki had been studying abroad with his late father on a humanitarian project in Nigeria. During a flash flood that trapped several volunteers, a frightened young girl refused to leave without helping him recover an important family keepsake from the rushing water. That brave little girl had been Amara. Before they were separated, his father had tied the simple red ribbon around a wooden charm and told both children something neither had forgotten. People of honor always find each other again. The memory disappeared as quickly as it had returned. Chairman Seo looked directly into Amara's eyes. "You remembered." "I gave my word," she replied. The ballroom remained silent. A board member finally laughed awkwardly. "Chairman, surely this is just an old coincidence." Chairman Seo slowly turned. "No." His calm voice echoed across the marble hall. "It is a debt." The room stiffened. "I invited Miss Amara personally." Several faces drained of color. "The invitation was sent under my private authorization." One hostess nearly dropped her tablet. But we checked. I know exactly how many times she was questioned. His words remained gentle, yet every sentence carried unmistakable authority. I also know who laughed. No one dared move. Without raising his voice, Chairman CO addressed the estate manager. Please bring another chair. The manager hurried away. One of the executives smiled nervously. There must be some misunderstanding. We were only making conversation. Chairman CO met his eyes. Conversation reveals character. Nothing more needed to be said. Within moments, a beautifully carved chair was placed. Not at the back of the ballroom, but beside Chairman CO's own seat at the head table. Gasps spread to the audience. That seat had remained empty at every gala for years. No guest had ever occupied it. Chairman CO turned toward Amara. Would you honor my late father's memory by joining me? Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she stood with quiet composure. It would be my honor. As she crossed the ballroom beside him, the same people who had dismissed her only minutes earlier stepped aside with lowered heads. Yet the greatest surprise was still ahead. Among the evening's honored donors was an influential international investor who had quietly funded education projects across Africa for years. As he approached the head table and saw Amara, he stopped in disbelief. Miss Ease, he asked. She recognized him immediately. He smiled broadly. I've been trying to find you for nearly 5 years. The entire ballroom looked from the investor to Amara, realizing there was far more to her story than anyone had imagined. The investor crossed the ballroom with a look of genuine relief rather than polite recognition. For a man whose schedule was planned months in advance, he suddenly seemed to have forgotten every other guest in the room. Miss Ease, he repeated warmly. I can't believe I finally found you. Amara smiled in surprise. It's been a long time, Mr. Richardson. Chairman CO quietly observed the exchange without interrupting. Richardson turned toward the crowd. I've spoken at conferences all over the world about an anonymous volunteer who inspired our foundation to build schools across rural communities. I never knew where she had gone. The whispers began again, but they sounded very different now. Volunteer? What foundation? I thought she worked for the event staff. Richardson laughed gently. Worked for the staff? No. He looked proudly at Amara. 5 years ago, my organization nearly canceled a medical outreach program after several sponsors withdrew. We were overwhelmed. Then this remarkable young woman sold nearly everything she owned to keep the children's clinic open for 1 more month. A stunned silence swept across the ballroom. No cameras were present, Richardson continued. No reporters. No awards. She asked for nothing in return. He paused before adding softly, that 1 month allowed us to secure permanent funding. Today, more than 12,000 children have received medical care because she refused to let us give up. Several guests lowered their eyes. The woman who had suggested Amara belong with the catering staff could no longer meet anyone's gaze. Chairman CO spoke quietly. You never told anyone. Amara offered a small smile. The children didn't need my name. They needed the clinic. Those simple words carried more weight than the expensive speeches delivered earlier that evening. An elderly member Han Foundation wiped away a tear. I've attended charity galas for 30 years, he whispered. I've never heard anyone describe generosity so simply. Chairman CO slowly stood. The entire ballroom instinctively rose with him. I believe, he said, our program tonight requires one change. The master of ceremonies looked confused. Chairman, the keynote address. But you're scheduled to... I know. He turned toward Amara. I would rather hear from someone who understands compassion better than I do. A ripple of astonishment passed through the audience. No one could remember Chairman CO surrendering the podium to another guest. Amara immediately shook her head. I didn't come here to speak. I know. Then why me? His answer was almost a whisper. Because people listened to the wrong voices tonight. The ballroom became perfectly still. They judged appearance before character. No one dared object. Chairman CO faced the audience. Power without humility creates pride. His eyes moved across the room. Wealth without compassion creates emptiness. Finally, He looked toward Amara. But kindness performed in silence creates a legacy. The applause began with only a handful of people. Then dozens joined. Within seconds, a ballroom echoed with a standing ovation, unlike anything the annual gala had witnessed before. Amara stood frozen. Not because she wanted recognition, because for the first time in many years, she felt seen. When the applause finally settled, she approached the podium slowly. She didn't unfold prepared notes. She simply rested her hands against the polished wood and smiled. "I don't really know how to give speeches," she admitted, drawing a few warm laughs. "But I know what kindness feels like." The room leaned in. "When I was a little girl, my parents taught me that generosity isn't measured by how much you have. It's measured by what you're willing to share when giving is difficult." Her eyes wandered across the guests. "Sometimes that's money." She paused. "Sometimes it's time." Another pause. "And sometimes it's choosing not to embarrass someone who already feels alone." Those words landed like gentle thunder. Several people who had mocked her earlier looked visibly shaken. One executive's wife quietly removed the diamond bracelet she had intended to auction and handed it to the charity director. "I'd like to increase my donation," she whispered. Others followed. Pledges that had been carefully calculated moments earlier were suddenly doubled, then tripled. Not because they wished to impress Chairman Seo, because one woman's quiet dignity had reminded them why they had gathered in the first place. As Chairman Seo watched the donations climb, his secretary leaned closer. "Sir, this may become the most successful charity gala in Han Foundation's history." Chairman Seo smiled faintly. "It already has." Yet as the evening seemed to reach its happiest moment, the estate's chief of security approached with unusual urgency. He stopped beside Chairman Seo and spoke in a voice too low for anyone else to hear. "Chairman, we've discovered someone entered the estate tonight using forged credentials." Chairman Seo's calm expression didn't change. "Who?" The security chief glanced toward the crowded ballroom. "We don't know yet." His next words carried a quiet warning. "But we believe they came from Miss Amara." The warmth that filled the ballroom faded in an instant. Chairman Seo gave the slightest nod to the chief of security. "Continue watching," he said quietly. "No panic. No announcements." "Yes, Chairman." The security chief disappeared into the crowd as silently as he had arrived. Amara noticed the brief exchange. "Is something wrong?" Chairman Seo met her eyes with reassuring calm. "Nothing that should interrupt your evening." She could tell he was protecting her from unnecessary worry, but she also sensed the atmosphere had changed. The security officers standing near the marble columns had subtly adjusted their positions. Guests would never notice it, yet together they formed a quiet circle around the head table. Someone was being protected. The orchestra resumed playing, but Chairman Seo's attention never drifted far from Amara. Across the ballroom, a man dressed in an expensive tuxedo watched them from behind a champagne tower. His smile appeared effortless, but his eyes never left Amara. He wasn't interested in the gala. He was waiting. Meanwhile, the charity auction began. Rare artwork, historical jewelry, and luxury travel experiences attracted generous bids. Every successful auction raised more funds than expected, inspired by Amara's heartfelt speech. Then the auctioneer unveiled the final item, a beautifully preserved wooden keepsake box. Chairman Seo froze. Inside the box rested an antique compass engraved with the Han family crest. Most guests admired it simply because it looked valuable. Only Chairman Seo understood its true meaning. His father had once believed the compass lost forever. It had disappeared during the humanitarian mission decades earlier. Yet here it was, displayed beneath bright lights. The auctioneer smiled. This extraordinary family heirloom was anonymously donated earlier this week. Chairman Seo slowly stood. "Who donated it?" "I'm afraid the donor requested complete anonymity." Before anyone could respond, a voice echoed from the back of the ballroom. "I did." Every head turned. The elegant man from beside the champagne tower stepped forward with measured confidence. "My name is Victor Huang." His smile never reached his eyes. "I thought it was time this remarkable family recovered something they had been searching for." Chairman Seo studied him carefully. "I don't believe we've met." "No." Victor stopped a respectful distance away. But our families crossed paths many years ago. A flicker of recognition passed across Chairman Seo's face. Not because he remembered Victor, because he remembered the surname. Huang, one of Han Group's legal advisors, quietly inhaled. Chairman Seo's father had once investigated a business empire controlled by the Huang family after discovering irregular financial transactions involving overseas charities. The investigation had ended abruptly after critical documents disappeared. The truth had never been uncovered. Victor continued speaking smoothly. I heard your gala celebrated second chances. He looked directly at Amara. So I thought perhaps tonight would be an appropriate time to return something that never belonged to my family. The room remained silent. Chairman Seo walked toward the display case containing the compass. He didn't touch it. Instead, he asked one simple question. Why now? Victor's smile faded for the first time. Because my father died last month. No one interrupted. Before he passed away, Victor continued, he confessed that he had hidden evidence connected to your father's investigation. Several guests exchanged anxious glances. He also admitted, Victor said quietly, that an innocent volunteer was blamed when the documents vanished. Amara's breathing caught. She remembered, years ago, rumors had spread to the aid organization that someone had stolen confidential records. Volunteers had begun suspecting one another. Ashamed and heartbroken by the accusations, Amara had quietly left before anyone could formally clear her name. She had carried that wound in silence ever since. Victor lowered his head. My father told me your name. He looked directly at her. You were innocent. The ballroom seemed to stop breathing. Victor reached into his jacket and removed a sealed envelope. These are his written confession and the original documents. He held them out with both hands. They belong to you and to Chairman Seo. Amara hesitated before accepting the envelope. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of finally receiving the truth she had waited years to hear. Chairman Seo looked at her gently. You don't have to open it now. She nodded. I know. Tears filled her eyes. But I think I've already received what I needed. What is that? He asked. She smiled through those tears. My name back. The ballroom, once filled with whispers of judgment, now erupted into heartfelt applause. Not for wealth or influence, but for the restoration of a woman's dignity. And as Chairman Seo stood beside Amara, he realized the greatest gift his father's old promise had ever given him was not the recovered compass. It was finding the courageous young woman who had never stopped living by it, even when the world doubted her. Amara looked down at the worn envelope for several quiet moments before carefully placing it against her heart. I spent years wondering if I had failed the people who trusted me, she said softly. Now I know the truth never disappeared. It was simply waiting for the right moment. Chairman Seo nodded with quiet respect. My father often said that truth has remarkable patience. Victor Huang lowered his head. I cannot undo what my family caused. No, Chairman Seo replied calmly, but you have chosen honesty over silence. That is where restoration begins. The tension that had filled the ballroom slowly gave way to something far more powerful. Hope, the chairman of the Han Foundation, approached the stage with tears in his eyes. Tonight was supposed to be a fundraising event, he said. Instead, we've witnessed something much greater. He smiled warmly at Amara. We've witnessed the restoration of a good person's name. The audience rose once again. This standing ovation lasted longer than the first. No one clapped because Chairman Seo expected it. They applauded because they had seen how quickly appearances could deceive and how courage and humility could reveal a person's true character. As the applause finally faded, Chairman Seo turned toward Amara. There's something I'd like to show you. Curious, she followed him through a pair of carved wooden doors leading into the estate's private garden. The noise of the ballroom disappeared behind them. Moonlight shimmered across a quiet pond, and gentle lanterns illuminated stone pathways lined with blooming flowers. For the first time that evening, neither of them needed to speak. Eventually, Chairman Seo broke the silence. When my father returned from Nigeria, he spoke about a fearless little girl who refused to abandon a stranger. A faint smile appeared on Amara's face. I was terrified. You still stayed. She laughed softly. I thought if I ran away, you'd be frightened too. Chairman Seo looked out over the water. My father never forgot that. He reached into his jacket and removed a small velvet box. Amara's eyes widened slightly. When he opened it, she saw the restored wooden charm resting beside the antique compass. The faded red ribbon had been carefully preserved. I had the ribbon protected after it was recovered, he explained. It belongs with the compass. She gently touched the ribbon. I never imagined I'd see them together again. They represent more than memories. He looked directly at her. They remind me that the people who change our lives often do so quietly. Amara's eyes glistened, and they remind me that promises matter. Chairman Seo smiled, a genuine smile that few people had ever seen. There's another promise I'd like to make. She waited. No matter where your work takes you, Han Foundation will stand beside every project dedicated to children and education. Her eyes widened. Chairman, that's far too generous. It isn't generosity. He shook his head gently. It's partnership. She searched his face, realizing he wasn't offering charity. He was offering trust. I would be honored, she said. Over the following months, Amara and Chairman Seo worked together through the Han Foundation to expand schools, medical clinics, and scholarship programs across several countries. Their partnership was built on long conversations, shared purpose, mutual respect, and countless quiet acts of service. The headlines praise Han Foundation's growing humanitarian work. Very few people understood that its greatest success began with a woman who had once stood alone at the entrance to a ballroom. As seasons changed, friendship slowly became something deeper. There were no dramatic declarations, no rushed confessions, only steady trust that grew stronger with each shared challenge. One spring evening, beneath the cherry blossoms in Han Estate's gardens, Chairman Seo held the same wooden charm between his fingers. My father believed people of honor would always find each other again. He smiled warmly. I think he was right. Amara smiled back. So do I. He extended his hand. She placed hers in it without hesitation. Neither of them needed elaborate words. Their journey had already spoken for them. Months later, the Grand Ballroom welcomed guests once again for the annual charity gala. This time, Amara entered the front doors as the evening's guest of honor. The staff greeted her with genuine smiles. The executives who had once judged or welcomed her with sincere respect. Several quietly apologized for their behavior the previous year. Amara accepted every apology with grace. People grow, she said. That's what makes forgiveness meaningful. The evening concluded with a record-breaking amount raised for children's education and health care, proving that compassion could inspire generosity far more effectively than prestige alone. As this story comes to an end, remember that a person's worth is never determined by first impressions, expensive clothing, or the opinions of a crowd. True character is revealed through kindness, integrity, and the courage to keep doing what is right even when no one is watching. Thank you for spending your time with Korean Underworld Diaries. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more emotional Korean Mafia Boss stories, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear which moment inspired you the most. And if you believe kindness and forgiveness still matter, share this story with someone who could use a little hope today. Until the next Korean Underworld Diary story. Remember, the greatest crowns are earned, never worn. Stay kind, stay strong, and we'll see you in the next story.